Orcs are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and it has nothing to do with their strength, their numbers, or their weapons. It's because you can't get rid of them. One invasion leaves behind spores, and those spores become an entire civilization, completely on autopilot. So today, I'm breaking down every single Ork clan, what makes them tick, and why they're all terrifying in completely different ways, starting with the ones that don't even need a clan. Feral Orcs. Feral Orcs aren't a clan. They're what happens when Orc spores get left behind on a conquered world and nobody comes back to check in them. Those spores germinate on their own, producing fully formed orcs with zero cultural inheritance, zero knowledge, and zero leadership. And here's where it gets terrifying. They don't need any of it. The moment these orcs crawl out of the dirt, they start fighting. The strongest survive, the weakest get crushed, and a dominance hierarchy builds itself automatically. It's pure biology, the factory default setting for the entire species. No updates, no patches, no civilization layered on top. But that's not even the scary part, because this process doesn't stay small. The tribe grows, scavenges weapons, conquers neighbors. That conquered territory produces more orcs, which produces more conquest, which snowballs into a full wow that consumes an entire planet. No strategy required, just math and biology doing what they were always going to do. Then the orcs run out of enemies, turn on each other, tear everything apart, and the whole cycle resets from spores in the dirt. It's the orc species working exactly as intended, going from zero to planetary apocalypse entirely on autopilot. But if feral orcs are the raw, unfiltered baseline, then the snake bites are what happens when orcs look at that baseline and say, yeah, that's perfect, don't change a thing. Snake bites. Every other orc clan looked at technology and said, give me more. Snake bites looked at it and said, nah, we're good. And that's not ignorance, that's a deliberate philosophical choice. These orcs had every opportunity to advance, to build bigger guns and flashier vehicles, and they turned it all down because they genuinely believe that complexity corrupts what it means to be an orc. But here's where it gets interesting. They don't just reject technology quietly. They built an entire culture around proving that the old ways are superior. Their rite of passage involves deliberately provoking extremely venomous serpents into biting them, then sucking the venom straight from the wound, not as punishment, not as a dare, as a status ritual. You survive that, you've earned your place in the tribe. You don't survive it, well, nobody's going to miss a weak orc anyway. And the snakes aren't just ceremonial. Snake bites travel with massive menageries of dangerous creatures, venomous serpents, aggressive grots, temperamental squigs, all of which serve real functional roles in hunting and combat. These beasts go to war alongside them, filling the gaps that other clans fill with guns and vehicles. It's brutal, it's effective, and it makes perfect sense within their worldview. So are snake bites backward savages, or are there only orcs who actually understand what being an orc is supposed to mean? That's a question their other clans have been arguing about for millennia, but nobody argues with them to their faces, because a snake bite who survived a dozen venomous bites doesn't need a fancy shooter to ruin your day. But if snake bites represent orc philosophy at its most pure, the next clan represents orc violence at its most raw. GOFFC. Every other orc clan has a gimmick. The evil suns have speed, the death skulls have looting, the bad moons have wealth. Goths looked at all of that and decided it was noise. Their entire military philosophy boils down to one sentence: hit them until they stop moving, then hit them some more. And they do not consider that a limitation. Here's where it gets interesting though. That simplicity isn't stupidity, it's a philosophy. Goths are the biggest, meanest, and most numerous orc clan in the galaxy, and they've earned that position by refusing to complicate what already works. Why build a faster truck when you can just walk up and cave someone's skull in? Why develop cunning tactics when sheer overwhelming force has never once failed you? Their iconic black and white checkered pattern tells you everything you need to know. No camouflage, no subtlety, no tricks. Those checks are a message, and the message is simple. We know exactly where you are, and we're coming anyway. But the real proof that the Goth way works is standing about 10 feet tall with a metal skull and a prophetic vision of galactic war. Gajkol Mag Uruk Thraka is a Goth, and he's arguably the most powerful orc who has ever lived. He didn't rise to dominance through clever schemes or technological innovation. He did it through absolute, cosmically terrifying commitment to brute force and an unshakable belief that the Wa is destiny. He's a living embodiment of everything the Goths stand for: prophetic conviction, overwhelming aggression, and zero interest in compromise. The Goths are the face of the orc franchise for a reason. They strip warfare down to its purest form and then hit it with a power claw. But if Goths prove you don't need anything beyond raw violence to dominate, the Bad Moons prove you don't need to fight at all as long as your teeth grow fast enough. Bad Moons. The orcs accidentally invented capitalism, and it's the funniest thing in the entire 40k universe. Bad Moons are the richest clan in orc society, and they didn't earn a single tooth of it. Their teeth just grow faster than every other clan's. That's it. That's the whole secret. And since orc teeth are currency, Bad Moons are biologically destined to be wealthy from the moment they're born. They didn't build an empire, didn't outsmart anyone, didn't conquer valuable territory. They just have really productive mouths. But here's where it gets interesting. The orc tooth economy is actually more coherent than it has any right to be. Teeth degrade over time, which prevents hoarding and inflation. Every orc grows them, so the currency scales with population. It's backed by biology instead of gold or government promises. It's genuinely a better monetary system than half the ones humans have tried, and Bad Moon spend every last tooth making sure you know they're loaded. The shiniest battle wagons, the most ornate armor, the flashiest guns money can buy. They roll into battle looking like a rapper's music video crossed with a junkyard, dripping in gold plating and custom weapons that actually work because they paid top teeth for quality. Their military superiority is real. When your entire clan can afford the best mechs, the best shooters, and the best everything, you hit harder than clans scraping by on budget gear. But the rest of orc society solve wealth inequality in the most orky way possible. They just punch Bad Moons in the face and take their teeth. No legislation, no taxation, no economic theory required, just a fist to the jaw. And since Bad Moon teeth grow right back, the whole cycle starts over. It's a self-correcting economy powered entirely by violence. If you think the rich orcs are ridiculous, wait until you meet the clan that just steals everything instead of buying it. Death Skulls. Every orc clan has a thing they're good at. Goths are good at fighting. Bad Moons are good at spending. Death Skulls are good at stealing, and they're so good at it that even other orcs don't trust them, which in a society built entirely on violence and betrayal is genuinely impressive. Here's the thing about Death Skulls. They don't see battle the way other orcs do. For them, every fight has two phases. Phase 1 is the killing, which is fine, whatever, necessary. But phase 2 is the real event, the looting. The moment the last enemy drops, Death Skulls descend on the battlefield like green locusts, stripping corpses of everything from ammunition to bootlaces to literal skulls. They take trophies, they take weapons, they take things that have zero practical value just because they can. And then they haul it all back to camp, where the real chaos begins, because Death Skull camps double as black markets where every other clan comes to buy looted goods. But here's where it gets interesting. Visiting orcs reliably leave with fewer belongings than they arrived with. Death Skulls will pickpocket you during a handshake. They'll steal your shooter while selling you someone else's shooter. It's an entire economy built on theft, and somehow it works. Now, the tragic part. Death Skulls are actually talented. They're capable engineers and improvisational technicians who can strip down enemy tech and rebuild it into something functional. They have genuine skill, but their attention span for anything they've already stolen evaporates the second something newer and shinier appears, so the talent is almost entirely self-defeating. They could innovate. They could build. They just physically cannot focus long enough to do it. They also paint themselves blue because they believe it brings luck from Gork and Mork, which is exactly the kind of superstition that makes perfect sense in a universe where orc belief literally reshapes reality. And then there's Gutbag, the most legendary Death Skull of all time, who allegedly looted an entire Imperial Titan mid-battle, not after the fight, during it. He somehow commandeered a god machine the size of a building and immediately turned it on its former owners. That is the most Death Skull thing imaginable, because it's brilliant, completely insane, and you just know he lost it within the hour because something shinier caught his eye. If you think the Death Skull's obsession with collecting stuff is chaotic, wait until you meet the clan that's obsessed with something far more dangerous. Speed, evil sons. Every evil son paints everything red. Their armor, their bikes, their buggies, their helmets, literally everything they own gets slathered in red paint. Why? Because red ones go faster. That's not a joke. That's their entire military doctrine. Evil sons build their whole strategy around speed. War bikes, war buggies, custom hot rods with massive exhaust pipes, and zero regard for structural integrity. They don't care about heavy armor. They don't care about big guns. They care about getting from one side of the battlefield to the other before the enemy even figures out where they went. Their vehicles are designed for one thing: going absurdly, recklessly, dangerously fast. And they redeploy across combat zones at a pace that makes organized armies look like they're standing still. But here's where it gets interesting. You'd expect this to be the punchline, right? Stupid orcs think paint color affects engine performance. Hilarious. Except they're correct. Orc technology operates through something called the psychic gestalt, a collective psychic field generated by the entire species. If enough orcs genuinely, sincerely believe something is true, reality bends to make it true. It's not metaphorical. It's not symbolic. The universe literally restructures itself around orc belief. So when an entire clan of orcs looks at a red buggy and thinks that one's faster, it becomes faster. Their misunderstanding of physics doesn't just persist, it becomes physics. This is why orc guns work despite being held together with scrap metal and optimism. This is why their ships fly despite having no business staying in one piece. And this is why Evil Sun's vehicles genuinely outpace comparable machines from factions that actually understand engineering. The joke isn't on the orcs, the joke is on everyone fighting them, trying to figure out why a rust bucket covered in red paint just lapped their transport convoy. Evil Suns are ridiculous, but they're also proof that in this universe, their conviction is more powerful than comprehension. But if you think they take the speed obsession far, wait until you meet the orcs who turn velocity into a full-blown religion, cult of speed. So we just talked about Evil Suns and their obsession with going fast. But here's the thing, some orcs looked at Evil Suns and thought they weren't committed enough. That's where the cult of speed comes in, and it's not a clan at all. It's closer to a religion. The cult of speed is a cross-clan subculture, meaning any orc from any clan can join. Goths, Bad Moons, Death Skulls, it doesn't matter. If your entire personality revolves around going faster than you did yesterday, you're welcome. They paint everything red, identical to Evil Suns, and they modify their vehicles with the same manic energy. But the distinction between the two is entirely philosophical, and it's a bigger gap than it sounds. Evil Suns want speed because it helps them win fights. Speed is a tool. Cult of Speed wants speed because speed is the point. The fighting is almost incidental. These are orcs who would strap a rocket engine to a shopping cart and launch themselves off a cliff not to reach the enemy, but because the acceleration itself is the reward. Warfare just happens to be the context they exist in. But here's where it gets genuinely weird from a lore perspective. Orcs don't choose their clan. They're born into it. Your clan identity is baked into your biology, your behavior, your entire worldview. The cult of speed breaks that rule completely. Members voluntarily abandon their birth clan in favor of a shared ideology. That's it. No bloodline, no territory, and no war boss forcing them in. Just pure belief. That makes the cult of speed potentially the only example in all of orc civilization where identity is chosen rather than inherited. It's less like a military doctrine and more like a genuine cult in the most literal sense of the word. But if you think speed-obsessed orcs are strange, wait until you meet the ones who'd rather ride a giant squig into battle than drive anything at all. Beast Snaggas. Every other orc on this list became what they are through culture, tradition, or sheer stubbornness. Beast Snaggas were built. Mechs and pain boys literally engineered these things from the ground up, fusing animal biology with cybernetic enhancement to create the perfect hunting orc. And the origin story is peak greenskin logic. Back in the rogue trader era, some mechs saw wild boar riders tearing across a battlefield and thought, we can do better. So they started reverse engineering the entire concept, splicing beast DNA with the orc physiology and bolting on mechanical upgrades until they had something meaner, tougher, and angrier than anything nature intended. But here's where it gets funny. Beast Snagga boys are stronger than standard orc boys. They're specifically built to go toe-to-toe with heavily armored opponents like Space Marines. Their cybernetic modifications and genetic enhancements make them devastating in close combat. The amount of science that goes into producing a single Beast Snagga is genuinely impressive by orc standards. We're talking controlled bioengineering, genetic modification, cybernetic surgery. This is sophisticated stuff. And what do they do with all that sophistication? They run at the biggest thing they can find and punch it until it stops moving. That's the beautiful contradiction at the heart of Beast Snagga culture. The most technologically complex orcs to produce have the most primitive ambition in the entire species. Their whole point of pride is chasing things that every other orc would sensibly avoid. Massive beasts, armored monsters, anything that could flatten a normal boy in seconds. Beast Snaggas see that and think, yeah, I want to fight that with my hands. It's high-tech in service of low-tech goals. Decades of mech experimentation and pain boy surgery, also an orc can feel really great about head-butting a dinosaur to death. That's either very orc or the most orc thing possible. And honestly, there's no difference between those two options. But if Beast Snaggas represent biology pushed to its limit, the Dread Mob takes the opposite approach entirely, replacing flesh with something far louder. Dread Mob. Every orc faction we've covered so far has one thing in common. The boys come first. Vehicles, guns, squigs, none of it matters more than the green muscle swinging the chopper. Dread Mob looked at that sacred principle and said, nah, give us more dreadnoughts. This is a specialized orc detachment built entirely around walkers, grot vehicles, and the mechs who keep them running. We're talking about an orc force that deliberately sidelines infantry in favor of stompy metal death machines piloted by groats and maintained by obsessive engineers. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for the rest of orc society. Dreadmob hasn't just added machines to their army, they've made machines a point. Think about what that means from a golf perspective. Golfs believe the only thing that matters is a big orc hitting something with his fist. Dreadmob is essentially telling them that a grot in a tin can is more valuable than a boy with a choppa. That's not just a tactical disagreement, that's a philosophical betrayal. And Snakebites, the clan that rejects technology entirely, would view Dreadmob as everything wrong with modern orc civilization condensed into one horrifying package. But here's the part that keeps Dreadmob from ever being taken seriously as some kind of orc intellectual elite. Their signature ability is called Try Dat Button. It generates completely random weapon effects on their walkers and grot vehicles. The mechs building these machines don't actually know what half the buttons do. They wire something up, slap a label on it that says push, and whatever happens, happens. That's peak orc engineering right there. Even at their most technologically ambitious, the methodology is still press it and see what blows up. Therefore, Dreadmob occupies this weird space where they're simultaneously the most machine-forward orc faction and still completely incapable of reliable engineering. They've chosen technology over tradition, but the technology itself runs on chaos and hope. If you think machines replacing muscle is controversial, wait until you meet the orcs who replace freedom with discipline. Storm Boys, an orc strapped to a rocket pack sounds like the most chaotic thing imaginable. And honestly, it kind of is. The packs are unreliable, the landings are brutal, and the whole concept seems like it should result in nothing but scattered green body parts across the battlefield. But here's the thing, Storm Boys are actually one of the most disciplined unit types in the entire orc military structure. And that's not a joke. Think about what aerial assault actually requires. You need coordinated deployment timing. You need organized units hitting specific locations at specific moments. You need orcs who can resist the overwhelming urge to just blast off in whatever direction looks the most fun, and instead follow a plan. That level of restraint goes against everything in orc nature. Most orc boys would rather chew their own arm off than wait for a signal before charging, but Storm Boys do it anyway. They operate in structured squads, deploy through deep strikes into critical battlefield positions, and execute coordinated shock assaults that would genuinely impress a military strategist. The goals are still fundamentally orky, hit them very hard from above, but the method of getting there requires a kind of military professionalism that most greenskins actively despise. And the rocket packs themselves are exactly what you'd expect from orc engineering. Characteristically unreliable, even by standards that already include vehicles held together with scrap metal and optimism. These things malfunction constantly. They send orcs spiraling into the dirt, launch them sideways into their own lines, or just explode outright. But none of that has slowed adoption of the concept even slightly, because when they work, and they work just often enough, a squad of Storm Boys dropping out of the sky onto an unprepared enemy position is genuinely devastating. That's what makes them so fascinating. They sit in this weird middle ground where the technology is crude, the failure rate is horrifying, and the end goal is still just crump someone from above, but the organizational discipline required to pull it off represents a real departure from standard orc mob tactics. Storm Boys prove that orcs can learn structure when the payoff is violent enough. But if you think rocket-powered discipline is a strange look for an orc, wait until you meet the ones who abandoned clan life entirely to become pirates, freebooters. Every clan we've covered so far has one thing in common. Whether they're obsessed with speed, teeth, tradition, or punching things really hard, they all operate within a group. They all belong to something bigger than themselves. Freebooters don't. And in a species literally defined by mob mentality, that's the most radical thing an orc can do. Freebooters are the outcasts, the exiles, the orcs who either walked away from their clans or got thrown out on their ears. But instead of crawling back or dying alone in the wastes, they did something no self-respecting orc is supposed to do. They went independent, they regrouped into roving bands of pirate mercenaries operating on the galactic fringe, selling their services to whoever has enough teeth to pay the bill. Warboss needs extra muscle for a campaign, freebooters will show up, fight hard, grab their loot, and vanish before anyone can fold them back into the hierarchy. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. Freebooters aren't fighting for clan glory. They're not fighting for a war boss they believe in. They're not even fighting for tribal pride. They fight for themselves. Personal profit, personal glory, personal ambition. And in a species where identity is almost always collective, where that wah energy literally feeds off numbers and shared belief, choosing yourself over the group is borderline heretical. The most famous freebooter in the galaxy is Captain Badruk, and his story tells you everything you need to know. Badruk started as a bad moon, swimming in teeth and flashy gear like every other rich boy in the clan, but his ambition outgrew the Bad Moons entirely. The clan structure couldn't contain what he wanted to become, so he left and built his own pirate empire from scratch. He didn't rebel against Orc society because he hated it. He just wanted more than any single clan could offer him. And that's the freebooter philosophy distilled into one career arc. It's not about rejection, it's about outgrowing the box. Every other clan, no matter how weird, still gives its members a collective identity to hide behind. Freebooters stripped that away and said, I'm enough on my own. For humans, that's Tuesday. For orcs, it's genuinely alien. But if you think freebooters are the strangest deviation from normal orc behavior, wait until you meet the clan that started taking notes from the enemy. Blood Axes. Every clan we've covered so far, no matter how strange, no matter how extreme, has been recognizably orky at its core. Goths live to fight. Evil Suns live to go fast. Snakebites live to prove they're tougher than everything else. You can disagree with their methods, but you can't deny they're orcs through and through. Blood Axes looked at all of that and said no thanks. Blood Axes are the most tactically sophisticated and diplomatically capable orc clan in existence. They use ambush tactics, coordinated squad formations, and genuine strategic planning instead of just charging headfirst into gunfire. Their war bosses don't just scream louder than everyone else, they actually plan campaigns. They think about supply lines, terrain advantages, and the big picture. They execute coordinated operations that sometimes rival what the Imperium's own generals pull off, and every other orc in the galaxy despises them for it. But here's where it gets complicated. Blood Axes haven't just adopted better tactics. They've had sustained contact with the Imperium of Man, including actual periods of mercenary service and military cooperation. They've fought alongside humans. They've traded with humans. They've looked at how their enemies wage war, decided it was better than how orcs do it, and incorporated those methods wholesale. That alone would make them controversial. But their current situation makes it worse. After an internal orc civil conflict called the Big Party, Blood Axes were so badly weakened that they became financially dependent on Imperial prospectors. These are humans who walk onto old battlefields, pull teeth from orc corpses, and pay Blood Axes in their own currency. The clan that prides itself on being smarter than every other orc is now getting paid by humans who loot dead greenskins for a living. It's a humiliating arrangement, and Blood Axes accept it because they have to. Here's the thing, the debate around Blood Axes has been raging in the community for decades, and nobody has settled it. On one side, you have people who argue that Blood Axes represent the pinnacle of orc potential. They're proof that greenskins can evolve, adapt, and compete with the most organized militaries in the galaxy on their own terms. Their war bosses possess a genuine grasp of strategy that no other clan comes close to matching. On the other side, you have people who argue that Blood Axes have fundamentally betrayed everything orc culture is supposed to be. Orcs fight because fighting is the point. The charge, the chaos, the sheer joy of smashing something with your bare hands. Blood Axes traded all of that for efficiency. And efficiency is a human value, not an orc one. The honest answer is that both sides are right, and that's exactly what makes Blood Axes the most fascinating clan in the entire roster. They force a question that none of the others do. What does it actually mean to be an orc? Is it biology? Is it culture? Is it the way you fight or the reason you fight? Nobody knows. And that argument is more interesting than any answer could ever be. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.